Hey guys. This is part 4 of What If Naruto Was a Different Person. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 12, A Little Empathy, Konoha. This is not how I should have learned about it, Naruto. Her voice is firm, neither loud nor soft, but carrying the weight of authority and a hint of frustration. I can feel her brown eyes narrowing at me, compelling me to explain myself before she really does get upset. I know. And I'm sorry, but at the time it made a lot of sense to me. I turn from the window overlooking the village and lean against the wall, meeting her gaze. A lot of people go through life with no real sense of purpose. They're just going through the movements basically. Sasuke, though, he had a goal, something that guided his every action. So when I found him in that base, I had two options to decide from. I could bring him back, which would bar him from ever encountering his brother again, or I could let him go to do what he left the village to do. So you let him go? Despite the fact that he could have reneged on your agreement and never returned? Tsunade asks, less questioning my decision as it clearly worked out in the end and more wanting to hear the why behind it. Why was I so confident Sasuke would return? Yes. He was being honest when he agreed to my terms, and despite what he'd done up to that point, Sasuke doesn't overtly lie. I explained before shrugging, and besides, assuming he was able to fight Itachi and get away, where would he have gone after that? IWA? No, the Leaf was probably the safest he could go. So in the end, your decision was made because you didn't feel comfortable taking away your old teammate's ambition? You let him go with no means to track him, with the only guarantee being a promise to return? Put like that, it doesn't sound very logical. In my defense, however, she's missing a lot of context. She lets out a soft breath of air. Well, luckily for you and not so much for my plans, your decision worked out. Her glare slides off me and I mentally pat myself on the back. I'd long since worked out an argument for not capturing Sasuke all those months ago, but I'd not been sure how Tsunade would take it. Nor Sakura for that matter, but hopefully no one feels the need to tell her. It's completely irrelevant now anyways. What matters is how we're moving forward now that the last Uchiha is within the village walls. So what now? The contemplative silence is broken and her eyes return to me. With Sasuke? I expect you've thought about this. In case we did find him while looking for his brother, what do you think is a fitting punishment? Imprisonment for a period of time yet to be determined, followed by probational return to service should he desire to. You saw to it that his chakra was sealed, and it'll remain that way until his sentence is served. An eyebrow quirks up then. I think it sounds reasonable, but what do you have to say about that? Not much really. It's not cruel nor unjust, so your word is final here. She nods. Good. Hopefully your teammates will share your belief. By that I assume she's mainly talking about Sakura. Technically, she has nothing to complain about when taking into consideration the treatment an ordinary rogue nin would receive, usually elimination. Makes me somewhat curious as to what happened in the original story. I know Sasuke was free later on, but did he face any charges, especially after attacking the Kage meeting? Or perhaps saving the world gave him some type of immunity? It doesn't matter anymore. Tsunade's voice gets my attention again. I suppose with the last Uchiha in our custody, it's time we close this chapter of our lives. Tie off loose ends. I don't need to ask what she's talking about. This has been a long time coming after all. I want Sasuke to be present. He of all people deserves it. Request granted. I suspected you would ask. Her lips quirk into a knowing smile. Now I believe there's somewhere you have to be? TCH, yeah. I'll be seeing you later. I leave her office with a final wave and take the long, scenic route out of the Hokage building. It's nice to take it slow for once, enjoy the sights from a different perspective compared to weeks prior. Saying that I feel a weight was lifted off my back wouldn't be wrong, would actually be an understatement regarding my current mood, and it's completely justified. I have Black Setsu sealed away in a container that I'll leave to be forgotten. Obito is dead once and for all, with his body turned to ash. Those are two important factors in a scenario where the fate of the world would have been placed at risk, and now they've been handled. I won't try tempting the universe, but I would say things are looking a lot brighter now. Another interesting outcome from the past mission is what happened with Kisame. I'd always assumed Guy took him down, yet although he did fight the tailless beast, Guy did not kill Kisame. Nor did he capture him. Instead, with an act that makes sense knowing how hardcore Kiri is, the swordsman took his own life rather than risk being interrogated, using water sharks. So Kisame died and Guy managed to recover his sword. Odds are the thing will end up in Tenten's hands somewhere in the future. I wish her luck with that. The other members of Team Guy captured Karen and her teammates with various levels of difficulty, ranging from heated battles to straight-up surrender from what I heard. That redhead is something else entirely. Sasuke must either be the most charming guy alive or Karen is super clingy. Can't tell which. Out of the 10 members of the Akatsuki, the Leaf and I have whittled that down to 2. Nagato and Konan are the only ones remaining, and the smart decision would be to go after them as soon as possible. People tend to lash out when cornered, and that's the last thing I want the Rinnegan wielder doing. For now, I'm just waiting for Jiraiya to return, and then we'll plan out our next move. That trail of thought is put to the side when I finally arrive at my destination, although I can't help but sigh before walking in. Couldn't have avoided this forever. Sasuke POV. Sitting on his cot with no one else for company, Sasuke had nothing but time to think. About his brother's sacrifice. About all the clues that in hindsight should have made him doubt what really happened that night. About his life decisions based on that deception. About his present. His future. Perhaps it's a good thing that he has this freedom, otherwise he might have never confronted this absolute truth. He, Sasuke Uchiha, was lost like never before. After his clan was wiped out, the next course of action had been obvious: avenge them. From there, various decisions were made with that end goal in mind. Graduate the academy, enter the Chunin exams, go to Orochimaru for training, kill said sensei, all to get stronger and defeat Itachi. Which he did in a fashion, and now here he is with no idea how to move forward. Itachi told him to live his life, but what does that really mean? Assuming he is let out eventually, should he continue on the path of a shinobi? Is that even possible anymore, knowing what he does now and after having betrayed his village? Another possibly even more important question: does he even want to be a shinobi? From a certain perspective, his path had been decided by factors outside of his control, and thus, the desire to be a ninja may very well not have originated from him. His father, his clan, his brother, and even his village, they'd all wanted him to be a shinobi, but after all this time, did he want the same? What would he do then, if being a shinobi were to no longer be an interest? What would he do with his life, with his time, to give it meaning? Questions, and even more questions with seemingly no answers. At least none within his reach. The sound of footsteps draws him out from his thoughts. Didn't think I was allowed visitors. Sasuke comments idly after throwing his old teammate a glance. To himself he notes how this is their second encounter since he left all those years ago, and once again, he's in a weaker position with his chakra sealed. You're not. Not unless they're authorized. HN. He'd been warned about that after the interrogation, told not to share the truth behind the Uchiha massacre. As if he'd even consider exposing something his brother had given his reputation and life to hide. No, everyone else would remain in the dark for all he cares. But it seems the Hokage doesn't understand his conviction and is restricting who he could potentially leak the news to. That came with the unintended bonus of not having to deal with his old classmates who all likely have words for him. And you? I know the truth if that's what you're asking. Naruto responds simply, using the intel from you and Karen, I was able to find evidence that Danzo and the snake worked together to implant almost a dozen Sharingan. We found out about his order to Itachi after bringing him in. Sasuke lets out a slow exhale. Even the mere mention of that elder was enough to make him seethe, but to think Orochimaru might have had deeper insight into that night made it worse. His infuriating smirks had suddenly gained a new meaning. All those times he'd been reminded of Itachi's brilliance, goaded to do better if he wanted to kill him. If only he'd moved to kill him before Naruto got to him. Pushing the thought aside, he focuses on the present. Why did you come here, Naruto? Well, the blonde moves to sit against the wall facing his holding cell. After almost 2 months, we've gotten all we can from Danzo, so his execution is coming up soon. You're allowed to be present for it. Good. Sasuke grunts. Internally the news pleases him. Despite the events surrounding the massacre painting a very complex situation, making it hard to assign blame, Danzo was the one who approached his brother and therefore will always be the true culprit in his mind. But if the execution is to follow the traditional method, who will carry out the sentence? Jiraiya. Sasuke tosses and turns that piece of information around in his mind. Either the Hokage ordered the Sannin to participate, or he has his own grudge against the elder. Whatever it is, the Uchiha finds nothing to protest. It's not as if they would allow him to do it. Several minutes pass in silence with Sasuke intermittently thinking about his future, and wondering why Naruto remained sitting there, the blonde stare burning into the side of his head. He's not expecting him to break down and start talking, is he? Sasuke has never been the type to discuss his feelings, and this setting is not conducive to starting now. Honestly, he just feels his ire growing. Something the once upon a time Moran notices as he stands up and brushes off. I don't know why I expected any different, these kind of things were never my strong point. Sasuke gets the feeling the last part was not intended for him. Naruto stares at him for a second before nodding solemnly. Sasuke. This may sound like empty words, but I'm sorry things went down the way they did. I came down here to check up on you and maybe offer some support, yet it's obvious that I'm out of my depths here. So rather than say something harmful or pester you to talk, I'll give you some space. Perhaps that is the best way for me to help. I'll see you soon, Sasuke. Curious black eyes watch as the blonde walks out of sight. Some days later, a couple Umbu approach Sasuke's cell. Knowing what is coming, he makes no effort to resist as they lock his hands behind his back and attach a tag to his neck. A quick test reveals it prevents him from forming audible words. Safety measures seen to. They escort him to an unfamiliar room within the maze that is the interrogation department. He casts an eye over the room before mentally casting it aside. The people are more interesting than the plain walls. Presiding over the room on a dais are the two living Sannin along with Naruto. The Hokage stands a short distance in front of the other two in a triangle. From the entrance to the raised steps is a stretch of open space, and on each side of that are Leaf personnel. Sasuke recognizes two who'd served as proctors for the Chunin exam and another duo who resemble old classmates of his. The rest are strangers. Itachi's secret assignment actually has a chance of remaining a secret if these dozen or so people are the only ones in the know. The guards lead him to the right of the aisle, and he spends the next while ignoring the various eyes that try to analyze him. Unwanted attention is something he knows well. And then he is finally brought in. Manacles restrain his single arm behind his back while another set covers his ankles and prevents them from reaching a full stride. Although bearing the signs of years past and various degrees of torture, Sasuke recognizes the man from Itachi's illusion. One Danzo Shimura. The catalyst behind the Uchiha massacre has marched past him, only a meter or two at most. Sasuke's arms are behind his back, but unlike the elder, his feet aren't shackled. This close, he would need just a few seconds to charge at him and knock him down, from which point a well-placed kick would see his throat collapse beyond repair. As long as he acts before, the feeling of hands tightening around his arms brings him back to reality. He blinks, and the dull roar of blood within his ears fades a bit. Seems he had underestimated just what seeing this man would do to him. But to think that this pathetic waste of space is the reason he no longer has a clan, that this filthy, conniving wretch is the reason every Uchiha, regardless of their age and role in the planned coup, was slaughtered. It's safe to say that the anger and hatred Sasuke had once held for Itachi is a campfire compared to the all-consuming inferno burning inside him now. Truly, with no previous bonds, this is someone Sasuke could detest with all his being. And he does. A prayer is sent up then, one begging for no further twists, because as the blade swings and the head rolls, there is nothing but dark satisfaction within his chest. POV restored. You know, I have a whole new respect for those in the psychiatric field. To be able to analyze someone's psyche and then use that understanding to help them recover, or predict their next move if they're a criminal, is something that shouldn't be taken for granted. Of course, this mental musing comes about due to Sasuke. I was right in assuming talking to him wouldn't be easy. For obvious reasons, the guy was a whirlwind of emotions. My senses easily picked up rage, confusion, betrayal, guilt, and a lot more. And the thing is, just because I could tell what emotions he was feeling did not mean I knew the why behind them. He could have very well been enraged at the village as a whole rather than just Danzo. Could have been a combination of the two. Maybe a large part of that rage was at the cripple and a small fraction at the Leaf. Furthermore, just who or what exactly did he feel betrayed him? The village for obvious reasons? His clan for not being completely innocent and ruining the image he'd likely had of them? Itachi for deceiving him for so long? Himself for indirectly killing Itachi? I had no way of telling short of asking him, but the vibe I was getting from him was not one of let's talk about our feelings, so I left. The way I see it, he's not going anywhere, so I'll bid my time until he's in a space where we can make some progress. I have no idea how long that will take, and as I watch him be escorted away from the site of the execution, I get to wondering. I definitely sensed how he reacted to seeing Danzo, from beginning to end, and I'm curious as to the effect this will have on him. That burst of satisfaction, does it mean he feels retribution has been achieved? Will he move on to grieving for Itachi and then eventually overcoming the loss? Or does he want vengeance still? Does he expect recompense from the village? When Tsunade formally declares his punishment, will that spark something negative inside him? It's all quite stressing to think about, so as per usual, I calmly push it aside for future me. Nothing gained from thinking about it now. Naruto? I turned to Tsunade with a raised eyebrow. Jiraiya and I have some things to talk about. Why don't you go spend time with your friends? I'm sure they have questions about their old classmate. That's not code for them doing other things, right? No, the serious look on Jiraiya's face seems legitimate. Okay, thanks Naruto. I'll call for you soon. With a smile from the blonde and a pat on the shoulder from my sensei, they make their way out. As if on cue, someone else approaches me then. Blondie, you look like you could use some company. Looks can be deceiving. If you didn't know her and only had her typical attire and mannerisms to make assumptions, you wouldn't expect Anko to be some kind of tea connoisseur. But she doesn't care about the opinions of the common person and actually enjoys things like hosting tea ceremonies and sampling it from different shops. It's to a new one on her list that we head to. Alright Naruto, she finally says as she gently puts down her teacup. Before this she'd spent a good 5 minutes evaluating all sorts of things that I hadn't even noticed when I tried it. You have 5 seconds to start talking before I show you my special. Do your worst, I'm joking. Her glare goes down a notch, and she thankfully doesn't carry out her threat while I gather my thoughts. Look, it's not that I didn't take your warning seriously, 'cause I did. I accept the fact that people change and sometimes you just have to let them go. I really do. I sense a but coming. However, Qiro, you have to admit that this situation is far from simple. I won't go further since we're in public, but I do feel like I owe it to him to try and make sure he doesn't go into a downward spiral. And by owe him I mean mostly Itachi and somewhat Sasuke. Is that all it is? I shrug at the question, making her sigh. Could be worse, I guess. As long as you don't forget the past and let him cloud your judgment, I'll stay quiet. Don't think it means I like him though. Trust me, you've made your opinion on traitors loud and clear to me. And she has. Anko and I have hung out a few times by now, and although not all of our discussions are this serious, she's taken the time to share her experience with having someone close go rogue and how to deal with it. Or how to not deal with it, actually. She's a supporter of holding people accountable regardless of previous connections while also not letting them hold power over you. She'll be the first to admit to not living up to the second part, but she's gotten better since the events in the Forest of Death. Needless to say, she doesn't approve of Sasuke running from the village to knowingly join the same person who turned his back on her and the leaf. Not one bit. She would advise me to forget about Sasuke and just live my life unburdened. Personally, I do plan on living unburdened to the best of my ability, yet I also need to think about the future and the last Uchiha's role in it. Rinnegan Sharingan hybrid or not, he could still be a useful person to have around if more of Kagaya's people come to visit, so my desire to see him mentally stable is more for safety's sake than some dumb mindset that he's a victim and should be pardoned. Although, I can't really tell her that, so it's best if she thinks it's as simple as him being an old teammate. It's not like I'm the only one. Rogue Nin can't be trusted. Why do you think we have a division specifically for hunting them down? I sincerely hope Hokage-sama doesn't go easy on him because he's the last of a dying breed. She catches my look. What, too far? Kind of, yeah? And as for his punishment, she's told me the gist of it, and I think it's fair. Of course you would. He gets to keep breathing after all. Her demeanor changes then, gets softer as her caring side comes to the forefront. I know you're a smart and capable guy, Naruto, but I still worry. I don't want his presence within these walls to stress you out. Weigh over you and make you feel like you have to help him. After all you've done, helping bring this whole thing to the light and taking down that scum, you don't owe the Uchiha anything further. You could let the specialists deal with the fallout and be completely in the right. I give her hand a squeeze. She moved hers to hold mine at some point, and smile. It's clear she cares, and although I think I'm good in this case, it's nice to get that reminder. Trust me, Anko, no one will be allowed to control me. Least of all Sasuke. Good. A beat passes and then her lips curl faintly. Now make it into one of your promises. I should have seen this coming. Just ruin the moment, why don't you? I promise to not let this whole thing create an unnecessary burden for myself. You forgot something. It's not complete without the believe it. The last 2 words are said with a high-pitched voice in mockery of what I used to sound like. It almost makes me cringe. Screw you, Anko. Tsunade POV. The successful retrieval of Sasuke Uchiha was not kept a secret. There was no point seeing as how he would eventually be a free man, if heavily observed, in the not-so-distant future. So although not overtly stated, the news would trickle down, and soon even the civilians would be aware of it. Not the complete truth, of course, as some things were better left in the dark. Contrary to everyone else who had the Uchiha on their minds, however, the topic she and Jiraiya were discussing in the privacy of her home was notably different. Then they could wait a safe distance from the border. They wouldn't have to know what you were there for. Tsunade suggests, leading Jiraiya to raise an eyebrow. That would defeat the purpose of them being there for added safety. He shakes his head. Security we don't need, I'd like to emphasize. But you don't know that. She attempts to stare him down while he does the same from the other side of the dining room table. Neither speak for a brief moment before she breaks the silence. Look, Jiraiya, this is important to you and I understand. What I don't understand is why you feel the need to go about it in the most idiotic way possible. So being optimistic makes me an idiot? His tone is equally hot. No. But not being open to alternative solutions does. She responds. They barely started and already the bottle of sake on the counter behind her is looking so very tempting. It's true, men really do lead women to drink. Being safer and keeping things confidential don't have to be opposing objectives. And I'm telling you we'll be safe enough without having to compromise secrecy. I may be older now, Haim, but I'm still a Sannin. And I'll have Naruto by my side. We can handle anything that comes our way. I'm not doubting your strength, you old fool. I'm worried that you might be too much of a good person. I see where you're going with this, so believe me when she cuts him off then. Would you really be able to strike them down? The little brats you took in when Orochimaru threatened to do the same too? It comes across as harsh, but she wants him to acknowledge this. Because let me tell you, Jiraiya, if I ever had to do the same with Shizen, I wouldn't be able to. You and Shizen are a different case, Haim. She's practically family at this point. He sidetracks. Perhaps. But don't think I didn't notice what finding out they're alive did to you. Deep down you never did let them go, and this guilt won't make it easier, I know. Before her eyes the normally boisterous man she's known for what seems like forever shrinks down on himself. It brings a pang to her chest. But I have to try, Haim. Try to change their minds? And if that fails, she closes the distance then, walks around the table to wrap him up in a tight embrace. It says something about the seriousness of the conversation that he merely hugs her back. You don't have to worry about me, Haim. He murmurs into her hair. But I do anyways, she whispers. Couldn't the big idiot see what she saw? It was fine to be optimistic and think he could get through to his old charges, but the odds were not in his favor. Only Kami knows what sort of trauma those orphans must have taken to be where they are now, and that kind of pain, powerful enough to turn them to the Akatsuki, would not be healed with mere words. No, such a thing would take time, or as was fairly common between contrasting mindsets, a conversation using fists. She didn't like such a scenario. The possibility of hesitating on Jiraiya's part was one reason, and the negative impact of killing a student was another. Damned if he isn't ruthless enough, and damned if he is. The addition of Naruto helped, but it didn't clear all her worries. The blonde was strong, frighteningly so for someone of his age, and much smarter than when she first met him. If anyone should be trusted to fight S-rank shinobi and win or retreat to live another day, then it's the Uzumaki. Yet she worries. In the heat of a battle between monsters like that, anything could happen and then she would be down another loved one. She wouldn't allow that to happen, not anymore. Would it help then, if we had a fallback contingency? The Toad Sage breaks off the hug, another unusual occurrence. With only the two of us, reverse summoning would be an option. It's a start, she allows. They wouldn't be going anywhere until she assesses every countermeasure possible. Hinata POV. She's facing a conundrum. One with dire consequences. Her expression is troubled as she adjusts her forehead, neck, protector for what feels like the 10th time. Completely unnecessary, but any excuse that gives her an extra moment to think is very much appreciated. Her eyes lock onto the source of her current dilemma. On the other side of the wall that surrounds the academy grounds and currently sitting on the swing set is her Naruto-kun. Luckily for her, he hadn't been looking at the entrance when she'd stepped through and taken notice of him. That allowed her to quickly backtrack and hide behind the wall from his direct line of sight. She could see him, but he couldn't see her. Which, sadly enough, is how it's always been with her and Naruto-kun. Back in their younger years she would watch him in class while he would focus on other things. She would watch him train while he had no idea he had an audience. She would watch him take the world head-on with a smile on his face while he believed he had no one on his side. It was rather frustrating, to be honest, and although she's matured and became stronger over the years, she can't quite muster the courage to approach him. Sure, she's interacted with him in Tsunade-sama's office where she would report sometimes, but never has she broached what she really wants to. The important stuff. This could be her chance, however, an opportunity to talk to him with no bystanders and therefore less pressure. All she has to do is walk through that entrance, and take perhaps a dozen steps, and she would be within speaking range. Just a few steps and the next chapter of her life could begin. If only it was that easy. Despite her current reality not being what she wished it to be, It's much more tolerable than the hypothetical scenario where she confesses and has her love go unrequited. Indeed, the illusion of a chance is powerful enough to glue her feet to the ground, make her hesitate. Perhaps now isn't the right time. Matters such as this shouldn't be rushed. With that decided, Hinata's legs finally obey her commands as she moves to approach Naruto-kun. Not to talk about her but to see how he's coping with his old teammate being back. She may not be the best conversationalist, but she can at least try to lend her help if it's needed. She deactivates her Byakugan before going around the corner, and there he is. Looking at her. Something flutters inside her stomach. Hey there, Hinata. He smiles in greeting as she gets closer. Ah, hello, Naruto-kun. It's not perfect, but at least she doesn't stutter. Is there something wrong? No, why do you ask? Oh, sorry. It's just that you're sitting on the swing and you only used to do that when I was feeling upset. You're not wrong. Forgot how observant you are, Hinata. She flushes slightly as he runs an eye over the tree and surrounding area. You know, for something that's meant to be fun, this swing doesn't really hold many happy memories for me. He shrugs, but that's in the past with a different Naruto. Can only move on now. So, how are you doing, Hinata? Getting back from a mission? I'm doing well, Naruto-kun. And I was here on my father's orders to learn about the responsibilities the clan heiress will have. She responds. It was still quite early for preparations to take over from her father, but like he'd warned her, the Hyuga clan was sizable and held influence over many aspects in the village, aspects she must be familiar with now rather than later. There was an image to uphold after all. Clan stuff, huh? Can't say I envy you. He rises from the swing and smiles down at her from his new height. You're not busy right now, are you? I had something to talk to you about and thought now might be a good time. He wanted to talk to her? More importantly, had he been waiting for her here? Either way, I'm not busy. Her report could wait a while longer. Great. Walk with me. And that's how Hinata finds herself walking beside Naruto-kun down the streets of Konoha. Almost as if they were dating, or anything else other than being mere acquaintances really. What do they look like from an outsider's perspective? Do they look close? Should she put some distance between them? Get closer? Wait, she'd had a reason for going up to him. I heard about Sasuke. Congratulations? Oh? Yeah, thanks I guess. It's a relief to have him back. That's good to hear, she comments. I'm happy for you. You're really too kind, Hinata. He turns to her with a faint smile, one she returns shyly. Not everyone is happy to see him after what he did. She'd worried about that when she first heard of Naruto-kun's promise to Sakura. Seeing it through would only be the start of his problems. I don't blame them really. Especially those who almost died trying to rescue him the first time. Was Kiba happy? I am not sure. And that's an honest reply. Kiba himself seems to have conflicting emotions. On one hand, Sasuke used to be a comrade, while on the other he betrayed the pack. It's complicated, I think. I understand that. But enough about Sasuke. Anything new in your life, Hinata? Well, Kurenai-sensei is getting married soon. To Asuma-sensei. She offers to a raised eyebrow. Really? That's good news. Will it be before she's due? Yes. She wants little Mirai born in wedlock. Her sensei was fixed on that in particular. Wanted her daughter to be raised in the type of household she'd never had. Mirai Sarutobi, huh? You don't like it? No. Not that, just getting a feel for the name. It's unique. Was that name planned from the beginning? It surprises her how easy it is to make small talk with Naruto-kun. She sees it as a sign of progress. She'd had no idea where he was leading her, but when they finally stop and he gestures outward, she recognizes the setting quick enough. Despite the lack of snow and bullies to mock the appearance of her eyes, she would never forget this street, the site of one of their earliest encounters. Where it all started. I'm glad to see you remember this. His voice takes her attention. While she'd been reminiscing, he'd moved to stand in a specific spot. The area where he'd fallen after taking a shot to the face. While defending her, she remembers. I never forgot either. Although, I admit, it took me a long time to recognize the significance of that day, of what it meant to you. It's... And there goes her composure. It's honestly what she'd been expecting from the start. Naruto-kun always did have a way of overwhelming her. The turn this talk was taking did not help. You ever think about that day and just wonder what could have been, Hinata? Like if we'd actually became friends over the shared experience? His voice is so soft, but she hears him all the same. Hearing one of her fondest dreams spoken out loud gives her the courage to speak clearly. I do, Naruto-kun. A lot doesn't even begin to explain it. So many times she's fantasized about growing up with him as a close friend and then later life partner. So much would have changed if she'd had him beside her. I do too. Especially recently. Her mind goes abuzz wondering what could have happened recently and pretty quickly comes to a conclusion. He knows. You're an amazing person, Hinata. One of the kindest people I know. The compliments, which would have been quite pleasant in another context, take on a negative connotation here. She almost wanted to cover her ears to not hear the rest, but her arms wouldn't move from her side. So although I can't readily return your feelings, I'd like to try. If you're willing, I was thinking we could start off as friends. Before her heart can break into 1,000 pieces, she takes in what exactly Naruto-kun was saying. She didn't necessarily have prior experience, but that was not like any rejection she'd heard before. She was sure that's where he was heading when he first started, but the ending there. Was he saying, "It's not the most romantic of ideas, but I don't know, it could work"? Naruto-kun shrugs, and for the first time she realizes that this isn't easy for him either. I'm aware enough to admit I don't know you all that well, Hinata, and I'd even go as far as to say you don't know me either. The Naruto that you developed feelings for is long gone, and I don't know if you'd like the new one the same. That was possible. She very much doubts it, but it could happen. But that's not what's important right now. She's much more interested in this idea and what it means. Friends who are trying to get to know each other. It sounds much like dating, but he didn't put it that way. She's happy he's not saying no, but she's confused all the same. Why not? Why this way? You're not any random girl, Hinata. You were always kind to me, and I want to return the favor. I want to do this the right way, and I don't trust myself to not take advantage of your feelings for me if we started dating like this. That sends her reeling momentarily. He notices. Imagine we were dating, Hinata. Imagine I wanted to change the dynamics of our relationship. Would you allow me to? And would it be because you wanted it or because you didn't want to disappoint me? Would you hold me accountable to being the best partner for you that I could be? I could go on, but the gist of this is that I don't want to put you into a situation like that. I don't want to be that toxic partner. In the privacy of her thoughts, Hinata admits Naruto-kun makes a good point. She knows she's not the most assertive of girls, and she also knows if she doesn't already love him, then she's close. If keeping him satisfied by her side was within her power to grant, then she'd do it in a heartbeat. And she might not even be conscious of the fact. She of course trusts him and believes he would never do anything to hurt her, as this talk is proving, but she understands he might have reservations, and this would help prevent that. She finally asks, and he smiles. Yes. And I mean it when I say friends. Not just two people who see each other every now and then and are friendly. I want to get to know the real you while you do the same with me. In time we could have mutual feelings for each other. Well, either that or come to our senses perhaps. I'd like that as well, Naruto-kun. It certainly sounds pleasant. Spending time with him was already something she wanted, so for now she's content. Konan POV. As the name suggests, rain is plentiful in her village. It falls in a seemingly endless downpour and dictates almost every aspect of life with an aim. Simply another reason amongst dozens as to why its shinobi are known to be very short-tempered. Regardless, the weather outside plays no part regarding the heavy atmosphere within the building known as God's Tower. Still no word. The blue-haired Kunoichi comments to her longtime friend and now leader as she helps him get comfortable. Only someone who knows her well would be able to discern any emotion from her stoic statement. Her companion is likely the only such person. That is concerning. For what reason would they be absent for so long? Nagato wonders aloud in his raspy voice. Konan stays silent as she has no answers herself. The man they know as Madara can be distant at times, off focusing on his own projects kept a secret even from her and Nagato. Despite that, he makes use of his ability to come and go as he pleases to relay information and assign certain tasks. So short spans of time without hearing from him aren't overly unusual. What makes this case unique is the uncertainty they are currently facing. Deidara and Sasori. Haiden and Kakuzu. Both teams eliminated during official Akatsuki business. The first handling the extraction of the One Tails and the second pursuing the location for the Nine Tails. Kisame and Itachi. Presumed dead or incapacitated after taking on a personal objective for the Uchiha. Madara, or Tobi after taking on an active role, and Zetsu. Missing and possibly incapacitated following last communication almost 2 weeks previously. It's possible Madara took interest in Itachi's objective, meaning they might have shared the same fate. From a group 10 strong, the only remaining members are her and Nagato, which places them at a disadvantage. Madara was a contributing member of their organization, loath as she is to admit it. He helped guide the Akatsuki to its current goal and often possessed intel that was hard to come by. The same went for Zetsu, who reported directly to the Uchiha and functioned as their eyes and ears around the elemental nations. Without those two, they found themselves suddenly in the dark regarding important information. Indeed, despite believing their lives would be better without the masked individual's presence, she admits that now is not an optimal time for said desire to have become reality. How will we proceed? She asks instead and watches as he ponders the question. Like her, Nagato isn't overly fond of Madara, so she is curious as to what he will decide on now, with the assumption that the man may very well be dead. Would he diligently continue on their current path, or would he forge his own? Either way she would follow. Their friendship demanded no less. We've come this close. He finally speaks up. She quietly nods at the statement. After all we've lost and overcame to reach this point, to regress would be an absolute betrayal of everything we stand for. We give him and Zetsu another 2 weeks to resurface, and after that we continue with the 8 tails. The 9 tails will be left for last. Will we look to gather more allies? Should they not return? No. You and I will suffice. He looks at her then, his legendary eyes blazing with power and confidence in stark distinction from his emaciated form lying on the bed. After all, we are accustomed to shouldering our burdens alone, aren't we? The sad truth of this world. He falls asleep soon after that, his physical body recuperating after the strain of capturing the 6 tails and extracting it. The process took a much heavier toll with only the 2 of them to guide it, and even then, Nagato shielded her from the brunt of it. As she makes her way around the tower, she reflects on the people who'd entered and left her life. Some were inconsequential, while others left their mark on her very soul. Yahiko. Sensei, would they understand? Chapter 13. Is it over? Konoha. Every important action deserves an equally important planning session. Of course, the second part won't be remembered in the same manner as the first, but that doesn't mean it's not necessary. So before setting out to face the remaining members of the Akatsuki, we had to strategize. Devise a plan beyond simply sneaking in and knocking heads. Said planning session took place in the Hokage's personal home under an assortment of seals that provide much better security than what I have in my own home. For now, that is. Is that everything then? Have we accounted for all the factors we can reasonably control? Tsunade glances from Jiraiya to me, the only ones in the room with her. Well, I certainly think so. Jiraiya nods somewhat indulgently. We can start this mission knowing at the very least that we plan to the best of our ability. Yeah, this is definitely better than what he and I had in mind. I have no issue admitting that, because while my own plan had a number of contingencies to it, the majority of them were focused on actually taking down Nagato and Konan, since I saw that as the biggest hurdle. These additions by Tsunade can be easily slotted into my master plan to great effect. Of course it is, I made it. I'll ignore that one. Even if only because she's more stressed out about this mission than either of us. Being relegated to the backseat where she can't provide any immediate aid is really weighing on her. If nothing needs to be changed, then we can do another run-through. Naruto, you do it. Definitely stressed out. And yet I go along with it, putting myself into the mindset that I'm running the mission already and outlining each step in the order that we take them. I tap specific points on the map spread atop the table as I go and patiently answer each probing question sent my way. When you take away all the specifics and look at it on the surface level, our plan isn't all that complicated. Jiraiya and I will sneak out from the village under the cover of darkness using one of the many restricted paths, and after taking evasive maneuvers to lose any tails, make our way westward to the hidden rain. We will sneak past our own border patrol. Their numbers are doubled for the duration of this mission, and that of Rain after crossing over. Before we reach the border, however, I'll arrange for a clone to be reverse summoned by Fukasaku, while Jiraiya will summon the toad who will ferry us into the hidden rain when the time comes. We decided on doing this step before entering enemy territory to lessen the chance that someone might notice the spike in chakra usage, so we sneak out of our village and into the rain village with none the wiser. Due to a lack of good intel, our plan for once we're inside is less comprehensive and relies more on smart ground decisions. We'll move fast to locate the Akatsuki's base and confront the leader and his partner. If at any moment we should find ourselves on the back foot, then we retreat. No debate. Tsunade has made that clear, and there you have it, an outline for the upcoming mission. One shaping up to be as black tape as attaches. The type of thing that will never go on file and will never be shared. The only people who will know the full details are sitting in this room. And just why is that the case? It's quite simple. No, simple isn't the right word here. The opposite really, seeing as how this situation we've found ourselves in is full of layers and different factors to consider. Jiraiya wants to redeem the 3 orphans who in his mind he abandoned in a war-torn village. He wants to knock some sense into them, and have them renounce their old ways. I don't know what would happen to them after that, but I do realize Jiraiya doesn't want to kill his old charges unless it's the final resort. Yet if he does succeed in getting through to them, no one can know about it. And when I say no one, I mean absolutely no one. If it leaked out that the Leaf had contact with the Akatsuki leader, the group of rogue ninjas who successfully captured several Jinchuriki and stole their tailed beasts, then there would be hell to pay. The various hidden villages would call for their heads, and I suppose it would be within their right to do so. Even though they contributed nothing, leaving the Leaf to take down the other 6, Itachi doesn't count, and no one will know about Black Zetsu, members of the organization. I don't imagine Jiraiya would take kindly to such a demand, so Tsunade would have to make a hard decision, bend to the other Kage or tell them off. Disregarding the question of which choice would be the right one, it isn't impossible that conflict could break out in such a scenario. A conflict that none of us want. Would be a real shame to try so hard to prevent one war only for another to break out over something I participated in, so the best way to prevent that outcome is to be discreet. No one will know when we leave, and no one will know what we're up to, not even those making up our contingencies. It will be annoying having to sneak past the hypervigilant border patrol, but that's the price to pay to have them both close by yet unaware of our infiltration into Rain. Of the Toad clan, only a select few knew where we planned on going, and they were well accustomed to ninjas by this point, and didn't put up a fuss as to what we would be doing there. They simply agreed to be our escape option should we need it. To get the clone to the Toads, I'll be using the method devised by Naruto during the Pain invasion, only in reverse. The clone equipped with the dual-end scroll will be summoned away by Fukasaku and be our middleman. There's a brief moment of silence after I wrap up in which Tsunade stares at the map in thought. We watch her sigh a final time before she looks up to pin us with a heavy stare. I've stalled long enough, I suppose, it's time. I can't come with you, nor can I send someone in my place, so I'm trusting you too. Come back home. We won't let you down, Haim, Jiraiya promises with one of his smaller smiles. Very different from the overdramatized gestures that make up his public persona. Just you wait, we'll be back in no time. Listen to the old man for once, we got this. I throw in. Matter of fact, make a note somewhere that when I get back I want some downtime. All this Akatsuki business is giving me gray hairs. Her lips quirk. Humph. I'll see what I can do. Take care of yourselves out there. Take care of each other. That last part seems to be aimed at me more than Jiraiya, so I nod when her eye catches mine. One way or another we'll both be coming back. That I promise. Aim. There's a reason the Toad summons are held with such high regard, and it's not because of their size. Well, their sheer bulk does play a role, but I personally like their versatility more. Take for example the hiding in a Toad technique, which does exactly what it says. It is utilized in conjunction with the Toad, which can alter its size from that of a regular, non-summoned Toad to the proportions of a small house. Throughout that process, the Toad can carry passengers who seemingly shrink and grow along with it when in actuality their absolute size doesn't change. The Toad hides the chakra of its passengers, making the technique extremely useful for infiltration purposes. Makes sense that an infamous spy master like Jiraiya would have a couple of techniques like that hidden in his toolkit. With it, breaching the heavily isolated village became a relatively simple process. I exit the Toad first, that odd squeezing sensation making its way down my body as I slowly creep out and balance on top of the water. My gaze falls onto the industrialized village off in the distance, and I can't help but wonder whether Nagato sensed us already, or if we'll have to make landfall before that can happen. Neither option discounts how remarkable his ability to sense chakra through rain is. I wouldn't even know where to begin creating a technique like that. A movement to the side lets me know Jiraiya is fully out, meaning it's safe to look now. It's squeamish of me, yet something about a man his size popping out of a tiny Toad's mouth makes me feel sick. So this is the new hidden rain, huh? Different from when you last saw it? Times like these remind me just how old this guy is. Very. Let's take a closer look and see just how much has changed. I let him take the lead as we leave the water and slip into the crowd of pedestrians going about their day as if the downpour doesn't affect them. I suppose when it rains more often than not one adapts quickly enough. We approach a stand of sorts, and in almost no time Jiraiya engages the elderly woman selling her baked goods and gets her to talk about the goings-on in the village. What we learn from her and others as we navigate the streets makes for a thought-provoking picture. Nagato, known as Pain to these people, and Konan are essentially seen as divine figures due to a combination of their power and the good they've done for the people since overthrowing Hanzo the Salamander. If the villagers were to discover our purpose here, they would turn on us, rightly seeing us as agents of the great nations here to kill their leaders and take away the stability and peace of mind they've established over the years. As if this village needs more reason to hate those who use their home as a battleground. The realization that I could very well be the villain gives me slight pause, but I harden myself and pray once more that everyone walks away from this encounter alive. The best case scenario for many. With Jiraiya focusing on gathering intel, it leaves me to monitor the response to our infiltration. I reach out with my sensing abilities in an attempt to anticipate any ambushes before they happen. As the minutes go by and we get more mentions of God's Tower, I start to realize that Nagato's rain technique might not give him an exact location for intruders, as otherwise he should spoke too soon. I almost didn't catch it, the barest hint of chakra sweeping around us. If they didn't contain part of her conscious, and therefore her emotions, Conan's little paper relays would have gone unnoticed. As it is, I pick up on the telling mix of surprise, regret, and then resolve, and having already grabbed my attention, I feel her chakra signature become stronger somewhere above and to the left of us. Likely as a result of her coalescing from her previous state of scattered sheets of paper. Mentally brushing aside how useful a technique that must be, I catch Jiraiya's eye and blink meaningfully. 3 seconds count, and I blink again. The message thus conveyed and received, we continue on our way. She follows us, of course. Traces of paranoia are picked up by my senses as we approach an area devoid of other life. Once sufficiently isolated, the signature that had been trailing her finally makes itself known by dropping down before us. The black and red cloak around his form is all too recognizable, even if his face isn't. The designations of the various paths were never important to me, so I don't exactly recall which is which, but I'm certain this one is the animal. The name came from its ability to summon multiple kinds of animals as well as summoning the other paths. Wherever this one shows up, the others can as well. In the air above the animal path floats God's angel on motionless wings. Her appearance is just about what I remember. Hair a unique shade of blue with a paper flower attached to it, skin fair and blemish-free, and a completely blank expression. The Akatsuki cloak is a given. Konan. Taking a step forward, Jiraiya addresses his old students for the first time in decades. And Nagato? Is that you? Your face has changed completely, but I could never forget those eyes. Hopefully Jiraiya wasn't expecting a happy reunion, because there is nothing fond about the look the path fixes on him. Total apathy, actually. You shouldn't have come here, Jiraiya-sensei. There is nothing here for you. I don't need to look to know Jiraiya didn't take that well. Don't give me that, Nagato. You were all my precious students. How could I not come here after getting news of your survival? Is his heated reply before softening his voice. Where is Yahiko? Is he part of this too? He died long ago. The news is delivered in the same tone one would talk about the weather. Konan remains silent in her position in the air, a pulse of negative emotions being the only clue she cares for the subject at hand. Although very distantly, I can sense a bit of Nagato's feelings through the path. His own grief was overshadowed by anger, definitely not as apathetic as the path's face would have you believe. I see. I had hoped you all survived, but it seems it wasn't meant to be, and for that I am sorry. I shouldn't have left you all behind. It was a foolish and heartless decision on my part. His head dips into a sad bow before rising after a moment, yet that does not justify what you're doing. Tell me, Nagato, what happened? How did Yahiko die, and how did you become like this? Nothing happened. There was just war. War and all that it brings. The path informs us, what you see before you is the result of that. Suffering so profound that it marked the death of that which you once knew. Yahiko is no more, Nagato is no more, there is only pain now. Pain that I will share with the world. Pain, huh? That's your reasoning for what you've done over the years, Nagato? That's why you created the Akatsuki and raised tensions among the villages? To have everyone suffer the way you did? Jiraiya shakes his head in disappointment. And you, Konan, why go along with this? You were such a sweet girl, the calmest of you three. How could you condone this, let alone participate in it? Even then she doesn't speak, making my ability to read people a godsend at this moment. Instead, the moving corpse takes the opportunity to talk down to us some more. I would not expect you to comprehend it, Jiraiya-sensei, encumbered as you are. The actions of a god are rarely understood by mortals. You think yourself to be a god? A hint of something creeps into Jiraiya's voice while the path doesn't bother with a response. A god, and this is what you do. Kill those who haven't harmed you all in an attempt to spread pain? I don't know how you've been led astray like this, but those are not the actions of a god. It's wrong, and I hope you can see that. You have the power to do good, Nagato. Instead of leading rogue shinobi and creating strife, focus that power on helping others instead. Violence doesn't solve. Enough. The volume doesn't change, yet it's clear the path did not like where Jiraiya was heading. Let me enlighten you, sensei. You speak of helping others, yet the constraints of your mortality prevent you from seeing the truth. For all your efforts and time spent on solving the issue of world peace, you are no closer to a solution today than you were all those years ago. It is clear that such an endeavor is beyond you, beyond any one person. That is why I have taken up the burden of finding the answer. As a god, I can accomplish what you have failed to do. I will create the peace this world needs. I step forward to stand beside Jiraiya and facing down the path. And how do you plan on doing that? By showing the world pain. The path begins its reveal. Through the assembled tailed beasts I will create a new forbidden jutsu that with a single use will wipe out an entire nation. Tens of thousands will die, leaving the people terrified. They will know pain, and only then will they learn the value of peace and seek it out. As the god of peace, it is my duty to guide the world along this path. The path to true peace, a path paved in blood and fear. I rebuttal. You'd be damning hundreds of innocents for this. The ends would justify the means. It responds without care, which sets off Jiraiya. No, they would not. True peace, a peace that would last, is not established on the graves of innocents. Your actions would only lead to fear and resentment, which would perpetuate this world of violence and hatred. No, Nagato. He slowly pulls out a scroll from his pocket and unravels it. This path will only lead to ruin, of yourself and of those around you. I won't let you do that. As your sensei, it's my duty to stop you here before such horrors can come to pass. And as I informed you earlier, you shouldn't have come here, sensei. All you've done is forfeit your life and contribute another component to my plan for world peace. So it finally acknowledges who I am. I'm sorry, Nagato, but your plans end here. The two Akatsuki members don't have the right vantage point to see Jiraiya slip a piece of paper onto the seal matrix of the scroll and seemingly store it away. On the other hand, he and I clearly see the path clasp its hands together, and then the puff of smoke that momentarily blocks our vision. As the smoke slowly dissipates, I feel the shift in Jiraiya's body as the clone he'd left outside the village transfers over the natural energy it had collected. At that same moment, I activate my own Sage mode via Kurama. The smokescreen is gone by that point, revealing what the path had summoned, the other 5 paths. Where there was only one now stand 6 figures in Akatsuki cloaks and Rinnegan eyes. I'd been expecting such a sight before this even started. Jiraiya, not so much, Yahiko. Comes his shocked whisper. But how? Nagato said. How do you all have his eyes, Yahiko? Nagato. Neither means a thing. We are pain, says the favored path, the one using Yahiko's body. We are God, and at this point, I've had enough of the talking. I know for a fact Nagato won't listen to a thing we say until we've proven ourselves. Proven through violence, amusingly enough. They shift, and I launch into action, a set of kunai dropping into my hands and going airborne a fraction of a second later. So ingrained is the combination that I barely think about it, and my chakra responds, turning half a dozen projectiles into a dark cloud seeking to impale their targets. The Yahiko path, Deva, chooses the easiest method of handling the swarm of kunai and sends out a burst of gravitational force, dispelling the cloned weapons and sending the real ones flying. I had planned for this naturally, so even before the Deva acted I was reaching out and infusing the air around me with chakra, which I then grasped and sent into a rotation, leaving Jiraiya and me in the eye of the sudden twister. I keep a tight grip on it, making the wind spin faster and faster as I count in my head. Once I reach 3 seconds, I unleash all that force outwards in an omnidirectional blast. It might seem pointless to throw a technique like that at an opponent who can absorb chakra, but I have my reasons. It targets and covers a wide area, meaning the path can only absorb so much of the technique, while the others would need their own protection. The twister has a few kunai, random debris, and a considerable volume of water flying around at high speeds, which at the least impedes their vision and should serve to make them scatter further. And most importantly, the Deva path just used its signature ability, meaning it's on a countdown before it can easily disperse this technique as well. Taking all these factors into consideration, the tiny amount of chakra I spent to create this diversion was worth it, as now I have an extra second to analyze the situation. There are 6 paths before me in various states of disarray, and a certain few require a specific plan of action when facing them. From just a few seconds I had to observe their appearances before they attacked, I was able to differentiate some of them. The Deva path, the one with the gravity techniques, took a direct hit and is yet to hit the ground. The animal path is also reeling back, but it seems it was able to summon a large panda to take some of the blow, and therefore didn't go flying as far as the Deva. There is another path near the animal, but I don't recognize that one. Same for another one further off to the side. One I can confirm, however, is the technological path. Its bald head is distinctive, surrounded by all that bright hair which wasn't able to obtain cover. And finally, there's the one that can absorb chakra. It was able to stand its ground with both arms outstretched in front of it. I can faintly see the distortion around it as the energy is absorbed. By process of elimination, out of the two that I can visibly place, one must have the healing ability, and the other the ability to rip out souls. So one's annoying and a high-priority target, while the other is dangerous, and will be matched with a clone. Since I can't tell which is which, both get clones. These observations and thoughts run through my head at lightning speed and don't interfere with my ability to simultaneously create 6 clones. They act without any verbal commands from me. One stays behind to cover Jiraiya while the others join me in splitting off and taking a path each. I don't attack my target head-on, choosing instead to take a roundabout approach and come in from the side. Or I try to anyway. It raises a hand and I feel a force grab me and yank me forward. The move might have disoriented an unaware opponent, but in this case, it's easy to use arrow step and pivot in midair, neatly avoiding the black chakra rod it tried to stab me with. I land lightly and channel chakra into my sauls to bleed off the momentum before closing the distance between us. I slip around a couple of attempts to skewer me and slam a natural energy-infused palm into the rod, which shatters it. Redirecting that hand, I aim it towards the path's face in a jab that it just barely avoids by tilting its head to the side. Just barely, however, isn't enough when taking into consideration the invisible yet powerful aura around the limb. Said glancing blow snaps its head backward and momentarily disrupts its sight of me, something that is used to my advantage. I punish it with a spinning kick that practically folds the corpse before physics does its job, sending it flying into a metal structure. That brief engagement confirms my suspicions regarding Nagato's paths. His ability to split his attention between 6 different vessels is impressive, very much so, yet at the same time, I remember that Konan and Naruto only really struggled against one of those paths, and that was after all the others were incapacitated. The assumption then is each path can only reach its maximum potential when Nagato is focusing all of his attention on it. Certainly explains why the Deva can't put up a fight against me while its ability recharges. And speaking of that, it's been 5 seconds already. I materialize a Raisin Shuriken in each hand and get ready to end this. Jiraiya POV. There was a time when he thought he would never get to see his old students again. When he received news of their apparent deaths, his days afterward had been nothing but grief and self-loathing. He'd had no excuse for leaving them in Rain, and therefore their deaths could be traced back to his actions. But to be a shinobi is to endure, so he'd pushed that moment of weakness to the back of his mind and focused on his duty to his village. Said focus was tested over and over again throughout the years, and it all came to a head when Naruto discovered that the Rain orphans might have survived. Much more than survived. They'd grown into competent ninjas and made a name for themselves, if only that name hadn't been associated with a group of international criminals. As he watches Nagato proclaim his desire to bring peace to the world using terror and violence with Konan silently supporting him, he feels something inside of him crumble. How did it come to this? Why his precious students? Vaguely he wonders if this is what Sensei felt when Orochimaru's crimes came to light. If so, it's not a very pleasant feeling. Even worse than having a comrade go rogue, it feels like he had a hand in this outcome. He failed as their sensei, so it's only right that he take responsibility and resolve this. Even if it means raising his hand against those who were at one point his children, he braces himself to do what has to be done, collecting the natural energy his clone had stockpiled, when he appears along with 4 others. Yahiko, the most charismatic of his old wards. He looks to be alive, which Jiraiya should be pleased about, yet something is off with the group in front of him. Using the sensory ability of Sage Mode, he notices that beyond the shared piercings and rare dojutsu, their chakra is similar to the point of being identical. You sense it, don't you? Their chakra? Asks the clone of Naruto who'd stayed with him, while the others faced down the group of pain. They're all the same, he acknowledges. Instead of leaping into the fray like he wants to, he moves to keep Konan in his line of sight while also observing Yahiko, and who he'd first assumed to be Nagato. They all have the same chakra and the same eyes. There has to be a connection somewhere. That's what I'm thinking. Remember Team Kakashi and Guy's report of their mission in the sand? About the technique Itachi and Kisame used to puppet those bodies? Oh? Something similar, perhaps? Then one reason they all have the Rinnegan and the same chakra signature is that Nagato is controlling them from somewhere. The clone finishes the thought for him, meaning Nagato is alive while Yahiko truly is dead, as he said. Jiraiya concludes with a grimace. It felt as if the world had decided to play with his hopes regarding Yahiko. Dead to alive, to dead, to seemingly alive, only to be actually dead, most likely. And if God's tower really is their base, then the real Nagato might be there hiding behind some sort of seal barrier, because I'm not picking up anything. Jiraiya focuses on the direction of that odd tower, and notes, he likewise can't sense anything odd. Either there's a barrier or Nagato is further than they can sense. Then that's our next target. While they were talking, the clones of Naruto had been busy dismantling Nagato's puppets. One was crushed to pieces, revealing mechanical parts inside of it, while another transformed into a petrified toad, meaning its ability to absorb chakra extended to natural energy as well. It's when Naruto, assuming that's the original, kicks Yahiko's body into a wall that Konan, who had seemed fine with playing a spectator role, tries to intervene. Pieces of paper from her wings detach and shoot towards Naruto's back, but a strong gust of wind from the clone beside him throws off their trajectory. Acting himself, Jiraiya exhales a stream of flames into her direction and feels his attack be impeded before it can reach her. Cutting off the technique and quickly rolling to the side, he watches as sheets of paper slice into the ground where he'd once stood. He realizes right away that she used her paper to counteract his flames, meaning those things were resistant to a degree. He feels a burst of poorly timed pride at that. Fire-resistant paper. No one can say his students weren't talented. Before either of them can attack again, a clone appears in the air and lands a kick on Konan's back, sending her plummeting to the ground. As someone who's been subjected to the blonde's preference for kicks, he has to give respect where it is due when she makes to rise from the crater her impact created. Jiraiya extends his hair between them to wrap around her, but she bursts into loose pieces of paper and escapes back into the air. A wily one. She doesn't get far, however. The clone in the air buffets the scattered paper with a column of wind which pushes them back down. Another column of wind comes in from the side via a free clone and strikes her general location. A third clone moves around and launches an attack perpendicular to the second and effectively sets up a cross stream that pins the papers from flying away. Seeing Konan taking her shape again under the onslaught of pressure makes Jiraiya move in, forming hand seals as he goes. The streams of wind let up right when he gets to her and plants a chakra-restricting seal on the bare skin of her neck. He makes the decision to tap a nerve cluster and knock her unconscious, grabbing her body before she face plants. Her face softens then, looking so innocent compared to her previous stoic expression. With a sigh, he lifts her up and onto his shoulder. That's one wayward student accounted for. Feeling the blonde approaching, Jiraiya turns to face him. A quick skin shows not a single scratch on his person. The only sign he'd been in a fight moments prior is the body he's carrying. Yahiko's corpse. Minus the black body jewelry, he'd seen it totting earlier. Why did Naruto take them out? I figured I should keep his remains as intact as possible, so I hit it with a controlled raisin shuriken. It turned the metal pieces to dust. Naruto explains, to which he nods in understanding. Millions of microscopic wind blades would do that. How is she? Fine. Cut off from her chakra and unconscious, but fine. We need to get to that tower as fast as possible. Would you mind? He gestures to Konan, resulting in a clone stepping forward to take her from him. He didn't know what opposition they would face going forward, so it was best if his hands weren't occupied. Right, no time to waste. He watches with a heavy heart as Naruto pulls out a free scroll from his litany of storage seals and seals away Yahiko's body. Another casualty of this cruel world. Let's go. They depart then. As Jiraiya had expected, their fight against Nagato's puppets had not gone unnoticed. No one had interfered because of the rain shinobi setting a perimeter around the battleground. Seems as if they believed their god and his angel would be victorious without support from them. Misplaced faith in this instance. The cordon zone meant they were able to fight unhindered, but they also had to take time evading the rain personnel to get to God's tower. Time in which Jiraiya's pool of natural energy ran out, unfortunately enough. Having barely done anything during the previous battle and now running out of power shortly before arriving at their destination, Jiraiya counted that particular usage of Sage Mode as wasteful. On a slightly different note, if he didn't know better, he would suspect Naruto of deliberately taking control earlier and making sure his participation was minimal. But he does know better and realizes that's exactly what the blonde did, likely as a way to lower the risk of him being harmed. And if he's seeing things correctly, then there's likely another blonde in on the plan. Probably her idea, actually. The white-haired Sanin snorts in amusement. Should have known she would get her way in the end. That woman. They opt to scale the tower rather than use the ground entrance. Their reasoning being each village leader resides on the uppermost level of their respective buildings, and Nagato is likely to do the same for various reasons. Halfway up, however, they discover the entrance, inside the painted face's mouth, and the plan changes. They go in, and once past the threshold, Naruto nods at him. He'd picked up Nagato's signature. Walking through the dimly lit hallways with Naruto in the lead and the clone carrying Konan in the rear, Jiraiya notes the distinct absence of people. Back in the Hokage building, one could always hear and see the activity as nin active or retired move around carrying out their tasks. Then again, in a tower this big, perhaps the lower levels are where village personnel works. Naruto stops in front of a door, prompting the party to stop as well. He can't tell what the blonde is thinking, but for a couple of seconds, he simply stands there before reaching out to open it. The door swings open noiselessly, and after another hesitation, Naruto steps inside, followed by everyone else. Jiraiya almost stumbles mid-step. So this is how it ends? That voice, Nagato. Indeed, before them is his old student. Or rather, what remains of him. Beneath the red hair is an unhealthily gaunt face with a thin neck leading to an emaciated body. His ribs are easily visible, and there is almost no meat on his arms. His hands and lower body are attached to a contraption that Jiraiya assumes is to support him. If his legs look anything like his arms, then his body likely needs all the help it can get to remain upright. The most horrifying part of this image is the various rods seemingly sticking into his back. The fact that he can see two ends of them from the front has worrying connotations as to how far into his body the rods go. How is he still alive? Are you here to kill me, Jiraiya-sensei? Naruto Uzumaki? Nagato's raspy voice jolts Jiraiya out of his shock. Returning his gaze to the Rinnegan orb that speaks of a bone-deep weariness while also brimming with life in comparison to their owner's body. Or perhaps capture me to face the Leaf's justice alongside Konan? I want to stop you from dooming the world, but I don't want to kill either of you, Nagato. Please don't force me to, work with me instead. Jiraiya goes around Naruto to approach the redhead. I want to save you. What is there to save, sensei? You've bested me, thwarted my endeavor for peace, proving my conviction insufficient. I have nothing left but my life in Konan, and you have both within your palms. Damn it, Nagato. Stop talking like that. You can still be redeemed, but only if you work with me. Nagato didn't budge, so he tries another appeal, and if not for your sake, then do it for Konan's. Your story doesn't have to end like this, and neither does hers. Those ringed eyes move from him to somewhere behind him before blinking. What would you have me do? Help me understand you. What happened to you? To all of you? He asks, hoping to learn what could have left Nagato in this state. Turned his students into the people they are now. And don't you dare say war. Who did this to you? Does it truly matter, sensei? Why was he still hesitating? Yes. I want to know what happened to you all after I left. Is this the pain you spoke of? Is this the reason he turned to the Akatsuki? The redhead stays quiet. Nagato, it was Hanzo. A soft voice speaks up. He marked the end. Turning around, Jiraiya sees Konan kneeling on the ground with her head bowed. Behind her stands the clone who'd been carrying her, and it nods when he looks at it. It had brought Konan back to consciousness. We were getting too powerful, beyond what he could control. Head not rising, Konan begins to recount the events that transpired within the village after he left. The three orphans forming a group of like-minded people in an attempt to bring peace to the war-torn Rain, to try and prevent other children from being left alone like them. That was the birth of the original Akatsuki. The group grew in size and influence, grew so much that Hanzo the salamander took notice of them and became fearful. He reached out with words of collaboration but instead betrayed them, taking Konan hostage and threatening to kill her unless Nagato killed Yahiko. Hanzo had seen Yahiko as the leader and spirit of the group and believed killing him would kill the movement. Ignoring Konan's pleas to leave her behind, Yahiko sacrificed himself on a kunai in Nagato's hands, and the sight drove the redhead to rage. Nagato saved Konan from Hanzo at the cost of his legs. Going further, he used a technique special to the Rinnegan to summon a beast that killed all the troops Hanzo had brought with him. The salamander escaped, while the technique stole a great portion of Nagato's life force and left him in the state he is today. Nagato would later get his revenge on Hanzo, but the Akatsuki was never the same afterward. Over time their vision shifted, and with influence from a man in an orange mask calling himself Madara Uchiha, they devised a new route to peace using the tailed beasts as a weapon. You understand now why my solution is the only viable one. We only wanted peace within the village, to make life better for everyone. We tried to follow in your footsteps, use your teachings, yet in the end, we paid the price for it. Nagato's face tightens, something very obvious on his frame. Your idealistic vision of peace will never happen in this world. The people don't desire it enough. I understand where you are coming from, Nagato. Jiraiya takes a moment to organize his thoughts. He won't get another chance at this. It can be all too easy to lash out at the world when it hurts you, especially when you have the power to enact vengeance as you do. However, rarely is violence the answer. More often than not, you will find that those actions, in turn, hurt another, and that creates a vicious cycle of violence and suffering, the same cycle that exists currently. My plan would have broken it, sensei. Once everyone had experienced pain, true pain, everyone would want it to end. They would cease the wars and violence that brought them pain. There would have been peace then. Jiraiya shakes his head. It's a good thing Nagato is willing to engage in the exchange of philosophy, but there is a disconnect between them. Your logic doesn't account for human nature, Nagato. You believe the world would see the results of your weapon and stop their ways, yet although that may be the case for a while, they would eventually rebel. They would band against you, and once you were gone they might go on to have some semblance of ceasefire, or they might turn on each other again. What I'm trying to say is that you would kill countless people for no reason. Like many things in life, peace is not something you can force and then expect to last. But why? Why would they purposely do such a thing? Why make their lives harder? Nagato asks, and at that moment he sees a younger, less jaded pupil struggling to understand how people could be so cruel to one another, because it's their life. Naruto responds, free will is important, and people would rather make the wrong decision freely rather than be forced into what's best for them. You would think you're doing a good deed creating your brand of peace, while to them you would be another great village doing as you want with no regard to their opinions. That's why, although idealistic, Jiraiya's teachings have a certain merit to them. You believe people can come to embrace peace as sensei envisions? Nagato questions Naruto. Jiraiya glances at Konan, who also seems to be waiting for the blonde's response. I do. I can't say that it will happen in your lifetime or even mine, but I believe that if we work together towards peace, to simply change how things are today really, then each successive generation will be better. Naruto pauses and then shrugs. That's just what I've come up with myself, but I think it has potential. It won't be a quick thing, but just like today people can have better lives than those who lived during the warring era, so too can our descendants have better lives than us. We just have to be willing to put the work in. Does that make sense, HM? And what of those who oppose the efforts for peace? What would you do with them? I received some advice a couple of years back. You have to find your reason for the things you do in this life. It's phrased differently, but Jiraiya recognizes the advice he'd given to Naruto after his first kill. To think it would come back like this. There will be people like those you asked about. People who enjoy causing suffering, to whom peace is not something positive. They will force your hand when it comes to dealing with them. You'll have to resort to methods that aren't exactly peaceful, and my suggestion then is to remember why you're doing what you're doing. Recognize that each life is precious, but that each violent act can play a part in the creation of something better. A fine line to tread. Nagato muses and Jiraiya nods to himself. A very fine line. Konan. My oldest friend. Said friend turns to him. I've always been so assured of my path that I never once asked you what you thought. I was wrong for that, Nagato. So I ask you now, what do you think? She's silent for a long second, seemingly deep in thought, and when she does respond it's with a quiet conviction. I would like to see this world they envision. The one in which peace is achieved peacefully. You think it could come to pass? There's a certain weight to the question. As if the response is something he desperately needs. I would like to believe so. Even if it is not easy, I'd like to know I played a part in it. That we all did. I see. I was not a very good friend to you, was I? He asks rhetorically. Konan makes to argue, but he shakes his head. To have missed this all along. I'm sorry for everything. Jiraiya notes the finality in his tone and gets a bad feeling. Nagato? I lost sight of your teachings, Jiraiya-sensei. Even now, I have doubts as to whether true peace can be established. This world we live in is simply not conducive to your vision. Yet merely because I am disillusioned does not invalidate what you believe in. Nagato, what are you saying? Konan rises to stand on her feet. I couldn't do it, but perhaps you all can succeed where I fell short. Jiraiya-sensei. Naruto. Konan. I wish to put my faith in you. Bring about the seeds of peace where I could not. You can help us, Nagato. Renounce the Akatsuki name and take on another one with the original goal of the Akatsuki. Jiraiya tries, but the redhead smiles sadly. I cannot, sensei. My time in this world isn't much longer. Seeing the state of Nagato's body, Jiraiya can take a guess as to what might be the reason for that. Konan voices what he's suspecting. Your condition? How bad is it? I hid the worst of it from you, didn't want to burden you further. That's why I hastened our timeline like I did, as otherwise I would have risked the completion of our plan. I have mere months to live, Konan. No, she murmurs, coming to stand before him like Jiraiya. No, that can't be, old friend. I know better than anyone how close I am to death. I can see its grasp on me. It is inevitable. Silent tears roll down Konan's cheeks. Jiraiya can feel his own eyes burning. Perhaps it is for the best. I did many things for the sake of my peace. Things Yahiko would never have done if it were him. I don't deserve to continue while they all died. This is my penance. You don't have to die, Nagato. I don't know the specifics of what that technique did to you, but I might be able to help. Naruto offers, and if not him, then Tsunade might. Jiraiya throws out as well. The faint embers of hope flare only to die again. Perhaps, yet that is not to be. I've long since made peace with my fate, so I can only be grateful that you stalled my hand. Nagato declines with a sad smile. Are you sure, Nagato? Don't think you have to do this because it's your punishment. He tries again. He really doesn't want another of his students to die, not if he can help it. We can work something out. Truly, Jiraiya-sensei, my condition is beyond repair. It's the price for wielding the power I did. He grinds his teeth yet doesn't continue fighting. When was anything in life ever so easy? If that's what you want, then so be it. Naruto acquiesces when everyone else stays silent. By the way, the man you mentioned, this Madara? If he wore a mask with a spiral design along with the Akatsuki cloak, then you will be happy to hear we encountered him on a mission not too long ago. He didn't survive. Are you sure? Konan questions. Yes. I made it permanent. It is for the best. He would never have stopped. Whatever the redhead was about to say is cut off by a violent bout of coughing. Seeing the way the contractions wreck his frail body really drives it home for Jiraiya how bad his condition is. It's a hard sight to stomach. He's not used to talking so much in this form. Konan flicks her hand out to no effect before turning to them. Help me move him, please. Right. Her chakra was sealed. Stopping briefly to undo the seal, Jiraiya steps up to help remove Nagato from the contraption and get him into a different room while Konan grabs the medicine. Vaguely, he notices how incredulously this mission ended, with him tucking in his fully grown pupil, but he says nothing of it. It isn't his preferred outcome, yet it's also not the worst, almost like the old days really. He'd do his best to cherish this second chance with them, even if it means putting one of them to bed. POV restored. Somehow, despite everything, I actually thought this could have ended another way. Instead, there's a dark cloud hanging over what could have been a joyful moment. I'd always sympathized with the Rain orphans. Seeing their sad origins and how their lofty goals were torn apart really spoke to me. It made me dislike the salamander and hate Danzo, even more, when I learned of his role in those events. In my mind, Jiraiya wasn't blameless, as I believed he should have taken them with him, or at the least make the offer. And after that came Obito, Madara, and Black Zetsu in the chain of deception that saw Nagato and Konan working with rogue ninjas to bring the world to its knees. It's hypocritical of me to have pitted the latter duo while disliking Obito, who was also a victim, but that's how I felt about it. As per the primacy effect, I was introduced to them first, so even when the true villain was exposed, I still had issues with Obito. Plus he killed Konan to loot Nagato's body, so there was that. It's honestly a relief, not having to kill either of them. All those years ago, when I first found myself in this situation, I'd promised myself that I would do whatever it took to end the Akatsuki and the threat they posed. If I had to eliminate all their members, then that's what I would have done. Wouldn't have been happy about it, but I would have done it. And isn't that a clear sign of how much I've changed from the person I used to be? Plotting another's demise when conflict was never really in my nature. Needs must, I suppose. Thankfully for me, I had Jiraiya tag along for this encounter. Without him, I wouldn't have been able to connect with the two. My appeal wouldn't have carried the same weight as one coming from someone they knew and respected, even if only in the past. It's unfortunate that we managed to persuade them to try another route to the peace that they've always wanted, only to find out about Nagato's diagnosis. Who could have predicted that he was already on his deathbed? I knew that statue took a great toll on his health, and he certainly didn't look well, yet I thought he would be fine. In the story, he only died after using a sacrificial technique, so I suppose that knowledge blinded me to the truth. He was a man with one foot in the grave already. I should have seen it coming, though. Something like this, an irreversible fatal condition, is frankly par for par regarding the outcome of people with good intentions. This accursed world isn't kind to those who seek to change it. But that's pessimist talk, and there are enough negatives for today, so why not focus on something good? Like the fact that it's over for now. This version of the Akatsuki, the Moon's Eye plan, the revival of Kaguya, they're all over and done with. No longer can they loom in the distant future and leave me restless. No longer will I have to spend time agonizing over plans and their possible outcomes. I've done my part and saw this task through to the end while saving countless lives in the process. I deserve a break now, don't I? Not a happily ever after, those are rare here, but maybe something else? Some time to myself where I can sit back and watch the sunset, perhaps? A moment to live my own life not dictated to greater threats? Yeah. That sounds perfect. There will be more obstacles to worry over later, but I'm going to enjoy this peace while I have it. Cammy knows I haven't been living for myself for a while now.